the villains. For every good guy, there must be the bad guy. Society looks upon villains with disdain because they refuse to follow the rules. But are these villains really bad or misunderstood? Are they truly out for chaos and blood? Or are they more willing to get out of their comfort zones than the average Joe? Join us for our Villain of the Month discussion. We will break down their philosophy, their past, and their psychology. And then you decide for yourself if these villains are humans or if they are monsters.
All right. Well, thanks for everybody tuning in for the monthly villain of the month, courtesy of YouTube. I am your host, Sigma Jones, and some of the gang is here, like Isa Sama and Lawrence Guy. First and foremost, we just want to give a shout out to the subscribers out there. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for tuning in. We truly appreciate the love and support. Hope you all are doing well on this evening or this morning, depending on where you're listening in. And so we are definitely going to get started. Some of our compadres is out for personal reasons at the moment. And so the show will go on. We got Isaac Samad here. And sir, you already know I got to play your intro.
Cool. All creatures need to obey. No one can survive without trusting someone they feel is better, more worthy than themselves. To avoid that responsibility, those who are worthy look even higher, searching for more superior beings. And those superiors do the same, looking for even stronger individuals they can believe in. That is how all kings are created. It is also how gods are born.
All right. So good, sir. How's it going?
Man, it's going good. Glad to be here. I hate that everyone can't be here today, but we're still going to make this a good and interesting and fun show. And just got to say, man, that intro with Teapot's voiceover, it really sets the tone for this.
Yeah, shout out to Teapot. He definitely helped us a lot with that intro creation and all. I told him like, hey, I got the script. I just need your voice to be able to read the script and give like that echo laugh at the end. And he was like, yeah, no problem. So put that together, and I'm glad everybody likes it. You know, I try to incorporate as much as some of the known villains, from the comics and cartoons and all. But it's like, yeah, let's try to mesh them in here as much as possible for the intros. So I have to say, came out pretty good.
It really did.
All right. And then last but not least, definitely got to introduce my man, Mr. Lawrence Guy. I don't have your intro yet, good sir, but I'll definitely find means of getting one worked out for you. But how's it going?
There is no intro. There is only a command. Kneel before God.
Well, there you go.
That's it. What's up, everybody? Shalom. Shalom.
Shalom.
Yeah, so I've been looking forward to this. I don't know how much I'll be able to contribute, but I've been looking forward to this, so this should be fun.
Yeah, not a problem. So for those that are listening in, there is a poll that is currently going on in the chat at the moment. I'm actually pulling it up real quick. I'm just using this poll just to get a reading on everybody in the chat. So at the moment, we got a good amount of votes, like up to 8 or 10. So as of right now, we got 62% that agrees with Megatron's ideals and philosophies, and 38% that say, no, I'm not cool with Megatron. So, all right, we'll take that as a preliminary, and then we'll have another poll at the end to see, if people have changed their minds or whatnot. So, all right, let's go ahead and get into this. So, the villain of the month for the month of June is Megatron. And most people, at least those that have read the comic books or are known of the animated series and all of Transformers, Megatron is the main antagonist or the main bad guy of the series. And so most people, I guess you could say, they look at Megatron and they see a character who, say, is greedy, is selfish, only out for his own gain and own power and whatnot. But I'm kind of one where, especially as I got older, I look more into some background about Megatron. And I come to realize that, a good portion of his ways of thinking is actually relatable if you were to translate it over into the real world. So before we get started, I'll go round table. So, Isaac Salman, what's your preliminary thoughts on Megatron?
Well, I know, from what I've got to see, he had basically a whole philosophy of peace through tyranny. Now, I do agree with this, the idea that, you can't have a peaceful coexistence with those who are, weaker than you. It's understandable. You really can't. I understand the need for the brutal tactics and and methods of what he was going up against, which basically, I mean, everything started by the a corrupt caste system created by the Autobots. So you can kind of get an understanding, but I will say, from what I do know, I don't agree with everything that, of course, Megatron says or does, or his ways, but I understand it.
Indeed, indeed. And good sir, Lawrence Guy, what's your preliminary thoughts?
Oh, they're pretty much the same as Eisen's, to be honest with you. I mean, you can understand the direction he's coming from. And again, like Eisen, I'm not sure if I agree with the tyranny part of it, but I do agree with the need for him to do it based on the caste system. And I guess for lack of a better terminology, he's pretty much used the same technique or backward that was used on them, I guess.
Right. And that's where I'm the same way with you guys, where I definitely don't agree with everything as far as like his methods of how he go about things. But like Isaac Sama said, when it's very tough to live peacefully with everybody, especially in the forms of Megatron believes in having power. And he believes that, you can't be a top species if you don't have power. And if you're not able to take it by force or take it through, I hate using this term, but take it through forcing or making the other party submit, then, there's really nothing left to gain in life, from his perspective, which I kind of find interesting because, we hear people talk so much about the importance of having power and, how power helps to make you somewhat respectable and all in society, but they don't talk about what are the means of obtaining it and how do you even maintain it once you get it.
That's a very interesting point there you brought up about they never talk about the means of obtaining it and how you keep it once you get it. And and there's really only two ways to get power. Um, one, I mean, well, both, you're taking it.
Hmm.
Power is never given; you can only take it. Um, one is by way of, I guess you could say three. One is by way of force, by military force. The other is by manipulation and deception into swindling power out of someone else. And the only other way after that that we know of, which is practiced all the time in our everyday lives, is through financial power. Whenever you have the means to buy up the market and what people need, you put yourself in a very powerful position. Then also, the other aspect of it is you have to be willing to flex that power, because if you're not, then you don't have power. You have to be willing to use it to show people that don't try me. If you do, it's not going to be good for you.
Mm. That's interesting. Lawrence, anything else you want to add to?
Well, well, where Megatron is concerned, like I said, I agree with him up to a point. Like I said, until we get to that part about through tyranny, because the initial concept is he lower caste, wants to fight his way up, don't want to be oppressed, etc., and so on. But once you step out of that zone and it starts becoming power for the sake of power, then you become an entirely different kind of person, character, whatever we want to call it. So
Mm.
that's where I draw that line. Because like I said, as long as it was fighting the Autobots for, not to be funny, because I hate using these phrases, but they apply, but equality, equal representation, the basic stuff that
Mm.
any lower caste would want. I get that. I get that. And even though I'm not thrilled about it, I understand the need of using violence to achieve it, especially if violence was propagated on you and yours. But once that's done, and you start talking about power for the sake of power, now we move into a whole different kind of beast. Now it's just megalomaniacal, power hungry, etc., and so on. And like Eisen himself said, you don't you can't you don't ask for it, you take it. And that's, like I said, that changes the parameters after a certain point, because in the beginning you can be sympathetic with him, but after that you got to step back and like, okay, dude, dude, it's a bit much. You know what I mean?
Indeed, indeed. Well, we're also joined by my co-host for the Culture Bomb, Dr. Phoenix. How's it going, sir?
Good, good, good. Good evening, Jim. How's everyone doing?
Yeah,
Doing
not
Yeah.
too
good,
bad.
good.
Hey,
All
Doctor. Hey,
right.
Doctor Phoenix. Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm well. I'm well.
Yeah, we
Um,
we
go
haven't too long jumped in, good sir,
okay.
on Megatron. But since you're here, I'll definitely ask the same question. What's your preliminary take on Megatron?
Um, some of his methods I didn't agree with, but I definitely agree why he came about. He was a representation of literally the caste system that was present on Cybertron.
Hmm.
Um, so Megatron originally started out as he occupied the rungs of the lower caste of the caste system within Cybertron, and so he started out some mostly as a slave, like him and most of the Decepticons. They technically were slaves, but he was a gladiator, and so he would fight in gladiatorial combat. And eventually, he rose through the ranks, and he took the name Megatron from actually one of the original 13 Primes. And so he technically became a freedom fighter, but then later became a villain. So he started out as a freedom fighter, but then became a villain because, as power often does, it oftentimes corrupts the individuals who have it. And so he became a representation of that. But originally, he very much was a revolutionary who wanted to do away with the caste system on Cybertron and felt that many of the things that the elites on Cybertron, which included the primes, which the primes occupied the top of that caste system, was outdated. So
You know what story this is, right?
I'm sorry, say again.
I said, you know what story this is. The autocrats are Rome. Megatron is
Yes,
Spartacus.
yes, yeah, yeah. Very, very, very much. His story is pretty much that of Spartacus. So yeah. But no, I just thought it was, like I don't agree with his methods, but sometimes you do need to take a sledgehammer to things, and sometimes he was that sledgehammer.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, oftentimes everything doesn't require a scalpel and a fine and a very fine-tuned hand. Oftentimes you need a hammer, a sledgehammer, and a chisel, and you just
Yeah.
well away at something. So
Yeah. Because
sometimes it's very yeah.
yeah. Well, the only problem with that is that, like anything else, when it comes to hammers, eventually everything looks like a nail.
Absolutely, and that was his downfall.
Yeah.
Eventually,
Yeah.
that eventually he became that which he fought against.
Exactly. Yeah. Because that's why I said up until a point I'm with him, but afterwards he
Yeah.
changed into something totally different. And that's why I made the reference about everything started looking like a nail to him, no matter what. And I mean, even to the point that he started transferring, his what happened on Cybertron to replicating it on Earth, even though Earth never did anything to Cybertron, autocrats, the yada yada yada. So yeah, it's interesting.
Mhm. And Doc brings up a really interesting point when he spoke about power corrupting individuals. My thing is, I always like to say that power doesn't necessarily corrupt, it reveals who you are, just like with alcohol and money.
Yep, that's
That is
correct.
true.
I would agree with that. I would certainly agree with that sentiment. I think it just, it is oftentimes what we see in society is that if let's just take Black America for example.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at how Black America is structured, and certainly the events of the past few days have shown that. Um, but if you look at the general sociological structure of Black America, you will find that Black America is not really a society that is really sort of you essentially have this sort of this male dominated form of power, but really a female dominated form of power. Some guys would call it, some folks would call it matriarchy, some folks call it patriarchy. I try to stay away from a lot of these social media euphemisms, but
Well,
what I'm saying is that essentially when you look at how Black America is structured, and you see that power seems to be only accumulated with among one group of folks, because arguably, in my opinion, arguably in Black America, Black men have very little power and have very little say so unless you have it within your own sphere of influence. However, if you compare that to like someone like Megatron, who he didn't just seek to have power beyond just being in control of the Decepticons, but essentially his power, it morphed into where he wanted to not just take over Earth, he wanted to rule the entire universe. And that's kind of where Black America is at, where Black America is kind of in this little limbo right now, where you see that there's this power, but then there's this fight for it, and then there's this vacuum, and then there's really no group, although you can argue Black women to an extent have a little bit of an advantage. But at the same time, there's this vacuum, and so someone will eventually fill that. And this is kind of where I go into my little rants about your pro-Blacks, but that's
well, 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 what's interesting about what you said, because I had this conversation quite some time ago, a year or two ago, maybe, with someone on a panel where they were making the argument about patriarchy in the black culture, and I had to clarify for them that there's never been a black patriarchy ever. From the moment we arrived here, we've never been in charge of anything, so we can eliminate that right out the gate. Um, Now, in reference to Megatron, in that aspect, what what's interesting is that again we go back to the beginning. Megatron started out fighting for fairness, freedom, whatever nomenclature we want to use. But after a certain point, it became an ego thing. It became about a power thing. It became about nothing but have, instead of what the original purpose was. So, so that phrase about ruling through tyranny actually showed who he really was. It was never about the his people as a whole, as it was that using his people was just a means to an end for what he actually was deep inside. Like Isaac said, power reveals who you really are. So that's how I interpret it.
No, and I think that's a very good analogy. I would agree with that. I agree with Eisen's point as well. And I would say that Megatron represents that power in modern day society, in modern day Black America, if you will. I'm just you referencing Black America. If
No,
you
I can see
look,
that.
if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
look,
yeah, I can see that.
if you look at how Black males and Black females are divided, and really where that power has shifted to, certainly in the last few decades, that power shift has kind of moved towards the female side of things. And so we've seen where, yeah, they get the power, and then now it becomes this sledgehammer that gets to beat you over the head. So if you're a Black man and you don't support the current law of the land, um, then you're something else. We won't invite you to the family cookout. And so
Well,
so
yeah, but we've been dealing with that forever, even before it being a black woman thing. So
I mean, obviously yes, but what I'm saying is that in contemporary times, we're seeing where that power has just really become more of a, I can't think to use this word because I think it's sorely overused, which is toxic. It
yeah.
it, it, it just becomes this really infectious um, dichotomy that takes place in Black America. So
I do have a question,
Okay.
if you don't mind. And I don't want to take up a lot of time because I know we're trying to focus on Megatron, but this question is for Dr. Phoenix. Um, this is a sincere question. You said something about what's been going on in the last 2 days. I've been out of the loop. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, probably talking
oh,
about the Roe versus Wade overturned deal, more than
yes,
likely.
Oh, you're
yes,
talking about that.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's what he's
Oh,
talking
okay.
about. Not
Okay.
YouTube. Not YouTube. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I thought it was something very specific about
No.
African Americans or something like that. Okay, I got you. Thank you.
Oh well, this very much relates to African Americans, but
No, no,
I
no, 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 no. I know where Roe versus Wade is very much an African American thing. I just thought it was something else outside of that because, like I said, I've been out of the loop, so I just wanted to clarify because I didn't know what you were talking about. That's all.
yeah, but I think since we brought it up, I think this is actually a good segue into sort of how power is wielded.
Mm.
So
Mm.
what folks have failed to understand with the current political state in this country is that this was the culmination of people think that one man came in and just changed the whole political makeup of the court in 4 years. No, that's not what happened. This has been a culmination of decades of work. This is a plan that has been in motion for decades since Roe versus Wade became the de facto law of the land in regards to abortion. Um, there has been this whisper campaign, if you will. And so again, you've seen that power has consistently moved through the shadows, never seen but felt. and that's what happened here. And so
Well,
when I mentioned earlier about Megatron being a sledgehammer, that's essentially what he became. He became more of a guy that, you know, as Lawrence guy said earlier, you know, everything became a nail to him. And again, the culmination of what we've seen over the past couple of days is really sort of how, you know, you have hard power and you have soft power.
right.
And so you have soft power, which which is what we've seen with in a judicial sense, where you have policy that affects things that can influence outcomes, versus where you have hard power, where you pick up a gun, you pick up a rifle, in this case a blaster, or you become a Walter P-38, and you know,
I love
in the
those.
case of Megatron, in the case of Megatron. So, but the point of what I'm getting at here is that at the end of the day, you know, there's forms of power, and there are various ways you can wield power. And what, in my opinion, what Megatron represents is really that hard power, that militaristic power, the power, the
Right.
ability you change things at the end of a gun.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. But you were. I want to respond to that, but I want to let Eisen go first. I'm sorry.
and I was gonna say to what you were talking about, bringing up the fact of what's going on here with Megatron, and you know, within, you know, the world Transformers, and in reference also to with Black America, there's one huge difference. Um, Unlike Megatron, the dudes in Black America don't want power. They don't mind being in tyranny. As far as the you know, as
don't
far
be
as the larger
don't be
percentage.
afraid to don't be afraid to say that, because
Well,
it's a very true statement. It is a very true
well,
statement.
yeah. Well. Thank you. You saved me the trouble because that's what I was going to say. That literally was what I was going to say. Thank you.
I've been thinking about that for a while. So,
And so yeah, so I can save a couple of breaths on that. Thank you.
I see it in everyday life. They literally don't mind bowing down because they do have a power that they can practice, but they're not willing to leave the broad on the table to do it. So it is what it is.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. Because it's just like the point of the abortion thing. In the full scheme of things, in all honesty, it's changed, but it hasn't changed. You know what I mean? I mean, it's no longer the law of the land overall, but each state has its own right to continue it or readapt it or get rid of it as a whole. So, you know, it's not like it's gone. They're just upset because it's not as easy, and more, and 9 times out of 10, you can't make everybody pay for it anymore. Because now, with it going to individual states, if a state decides that it's still going to do it, the people in that state can actually, you know, vote against it. I'm not paying for that. That's the only difference to me from a financial perspective. The law of the land forced everybody in the land to co-sign it, whether they agree with it or not, just by paying taxes.
But watch it. I mean, the state's gonna be paying taxes. I guarantee you, a bunch more are
Oh, I'm
because
sure.
I mean, when you have what is it, 27% of men that vote in favor of women interests,
Hmm.
they're that's why I said, you know, they're not willing to play their trump card because they're scared of hurting her feelings. Where as women, they don't care about hurting your feelings.
Well, it's going to be
Women
interesting.
are
Well,
savage.
it's going to be interesting to watch the next major voting cycle, because if I'm correct, and Dr. Phoenix can correct me, I think 18 states have opted out.
Yeah, you're looking at it's
Ooh.
probably going to be roughly about a 50-50 split down the line between the states. About
Yeah,
25 either going to opt out or have reduced uh, capacity for abortion, versus 25 will it will be their law. They will allow it.
right.
So,
Yeah.
but I think that's something for another day. I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
prefer,
My bad.
I was just about to say that. I was just about to say that.
I
Back
would
to
prefer
Megatron.
that I wanted to do a culture bomb on that one
Yeah.
with the so. maybe we'll discuss that.
Yeah.
Not a problem, good
Yeah,
sir.
I
So
bad.
so I do have an article here, and it actually kind of ties in a little bit about the origins of Megatron and Decepticons as to why they went against Cybertron and in the light. So I'm not going to read the whole article, but I'm just going to touch up on a few of the talking points that pretty much kind of ties in with what we all were just talking about just now.
Well, I will say
So,
this. I will say this
mhm.
before you start. I find the first sentence fascinating because we were doing an African American comparison. The first sentence is doing an Anglo American comparison.
Yeah. This particular article it is from a gentleman that's really deep into the like comic series and everything. He takes a more, I guess you could say, a real life approach of where he kind of compares it, him being a white guy, he compares it to, what he sees with so far as like white America and how a lot of things he sees from Transformers can translate to what's going on in America overall, but specifically for white America. But I definitely like the fact that he goes more into depths of the origins with Megatron and the Decepticons. And so I'm actually going to go over here to the fourth paragraph and kind of tie in a little bit, and then we can get back to the conversation. And so he said, contrary to many later accounts, the Decepticons did not have anything like legitimate grievances from a liberal perspective. But they weren't quite one dimensional bad guys that were greedy for power either. According to the omnipotent narrator, Antibolum Cybertron was a paradise. Each Autobot went about his pursuits in peace and prosperity. Some readers could, and no doubt have latched onto the words each Autobot, and find a basis for later versions which describe a paradise for Autobots, at the expense of Decepticons exploited in some way. But the original intent was clearly that the Autobots referred to the species. The malcontents who essentially seceded from and declared war on the larger population did not do so because Paradise excluded them, but because it offended them. Paradise, as addressed by Megatron, was a dead-end civilization. A society without want or struggle was very logically static and stagnant. So, gentlemen, I will open up the floor here. What are your thoughts on those last statements, as far as describing Cybertron from the mindset of the Decepticons and how they felt society just became stagnant because there was no want or struggle?
If you ask me, I think this is more indicative of Black America, not Anglo America, but that's just my personal opinion on that. Because I think very much Black America is a very static and one-dimensional society. And so I won't go into detail because I'll let the other gentleman respond, but I'll just leave it at that for now.
You know, working where I work and what I've done over the years, I actually can see how static society is in general, especially when I've listened to you and Logic's Finest over on the World War II room. Um, let's be honest, the larger percentage of society outside of just their own basic selfish wants, as long as they get it, they're happy. They don't have a want to be anything greater. They don't have a desire to. I mean, they're happy with mediocrity. So to me, I see it. You're only going to have that small percentage of people who actually want greatness and who want to be more, that are going to be. The larger percentage of society has and will always be stupid.
Well, I'm gonna take a leap or two here. Just by the wording he chose to use. um, he made it a point to speak about about the liberal aspects of of the society. So my first thought process is that he's a conservative. And he's writing this from a conservative liberal perspective. Um, there are, if you could scroll back up for me, there was something in
Yeah.
that paragraph that that caught my eye. Where was it? Da, 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 da. Yeah, okay. So the Decepticons did not have anything like legitimate grievances from a liberal perspective. Okay. Now, here's the difference between black culture and white culture. There is no doubt whatsoever that because of the history of both races, both as individuals in this country and as a group and as an overall nation, we have different concepts of how power, what power is and how it's used. From his
Mm.
perspective of grievance, they had no legitimate grievances from a liberal perspective. Yeah, for the most part, yeah, a lot of white people say that about us. You know what I mean? I mean, no matter what we say, from their perspective, look, you got food over your head, you got rent, that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that's what he's saying, but it can be interpreted that way. Um, as far as it goes for paradise, okay, well, one man's paradise is not, you know what I mean?
Another man's
Yeah.
hell. Got you.
Yeah, one man's paradise is another man's hell. So the Autobots can think it was perfect all they want to, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Decepticons themselves thought it was. And again, we go right back to the same thing. As far as I'm concerned, Megatron didn't care about either side. For him, it was just the overall quest of power.
Mm.
and
Yeah,
and and the, and the Decepticons was just a tool he used for it. You find something you can get in front of and use to your advantage in the sense of giving yourself clout or legitimacy. But the truth of the matter is you're only using that aspect to get where you want to go. We've seen that in every dictator throughout history. I mean, it's just what they do. They latch on to a social justice or reform thing or whatever we're calling, whatever you want to call it. But it's literally just a means to an end for them to acquire power overall and to do things that they want to do. I mean, we've seen it in Cuba, we've seen it in Russia, we've seen it, yeah, Babylon, we've seen Egypt, Rome. It, dude, I, I mean, that's just my perspective. So,
yeah. I guess my take would be, imagine a society where you had numerous Megatrons, people who are egotistical, are narcissistic, have megalomaniac tendencies, pun intended. And imagine a society with that. And that was my point of referencing Black America. Imagine one group of people who have that tendency. And essentially, if you look at Black America, you see Black men as a whole, in my honest opinion, many are not really motivated. And then you have Black women who are motivated, but they're motivated to lord over men, and Black men in particular, which is why over the last few days since this ruling came out, you've seen so many Black men out here protesting right along with Black women, my body, my choice.
well, that's
And
because well, that's because, and I don't mean to be rude, but let's eliminate the black men, they're black males. That's just me. That's
I
that's
mean,
just
we
that's
can,
just
we can shift the term from Black men to Black males. I mean, that's true, but the fundamental problem is that this is pathologic at this point. This
well,
is
it's
a,
it's 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 well, it's pathological, and as I've said on a couple of other streams, other channels, it's pathological, it's PTSD, and there's no small amount of Stockholm syndrome involved. So, I mean, at the end of the day, if we're going to be honest and just put all the cards on the table, Megatron represents the female gender of the particular group we're talking about.
And
I
that
mean,
was exactly my analogy from the very beginning.
yeah. There's no ifs, ands, or
Said,
buts. I mean, we're talking about a group that you could literally reach up to the sky, give them the entire universe, put it in their hands, and then they'll look at you and say, "That's all." We gotta be honest about it. So, yeah, I get the analogy. I absolutely do.
There's
Um,
my bad.
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say there is one difference between them and Megatron. Uh, Megatron actually has the power to beat somebody into submission. Whereas the males, they willingly lie down.
and that was why I referenced hard and soft power earlier.
Mhm.
Right, right,
And
and
so go
yeah.
ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. And to be fair, Eisen, it's both actually. I mean, you have the men who are willing to lay down and accept it, and on the flip side, as we've seen for decades now, we have the female gender who's not is not is not necessarily terrified of trying to go toe to toe with the male gender. I mean,
Yeah,
we've seen
I
them punch him, slap him. I mean, so it's a little bit of both, in my opinion.
Hey, watch this. That's because they know doggone well they're going to lay down. Hey man, I'm telling you.
Well,
I,
between that and Uncle Government having their back, yeah, yeah,
yeah, they
absolutely,
know they're gonna lay down. I
right,
mean, if if they had the balls to either not deal with them,
right,
deal
right.
with somebody like that, regardless of what they look like, um, and if they would actually do anything about it, they wouldn't try. Not as much anyway.
Mm, mhm. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I agree with that. Yeah, again, I guess my take on it is a little different, given that I, I've been in a field where obviously these things are very much in play all the time. These dichotomies, these dynamics are always in play, and then so my take on it, from my experience, has always been that you have hard and soft power, but this is why what we're seeing going on right now in society, and essentially why you can make this analogy with Megatron and the Decepticons as a whole. While I agree with what the guy said in the article for the most part, I think you can reverse that and just replace Anglo America with Black America. And
Oh yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
think
I would agree with you on that.
very much what you see in Black America are a bunch of Megatrons running around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, truth be told, it's we're saying Megatron. Tommy says Termin T1000s. So at the end of the day, we are talking about artificial intelligence, and I do mean artificial. Oh,
I,
so,
I just also keep in mind too, like many of the animated shows, and again, even in comics, when you take comic characters or whatever characters from comic books, again, these characters were representative of things that were happening within society.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so again, Megatron is no different. Again, obviously, was it Hasbro, Marvel has the rights for the Transformers. And so when you take that and you just juxtapose it against things that are happening in society, and certainly things that are happening in Black society, given we're all Black men here, it becomes very clear. You have this. I don't even know who would be the Autobots in this story.
I had I thought about it too, and I couldn't come up with nothing. I'm like,
That's
you know
a,
what?
that's why
I'm not even gonna broach it. I'm not even
that's
gonna
why I
broach
made
the topic.
that's why I made the point of saying that, the dudes are willing to lay down. That they're not
Yeah.
willing to use their power to fight against it. And
Mhm.
that's why whenever you look at this, every culture individual is going to only be able to relate it to what their culture is.
Yeah.
which
No,
is
I
why
agree.
which is why that man did what
No,
he
I,
did.
no, I agree. I
No,
agree.
no, no. There's no way he could understand what it's like living in Black America, just like I couldn't understand. I may have an idea of what I've seen, but actually being that, I can't understand it because I'm not there. But yeah.
No, I agree.
I
I
got
agree.
it.
I
Well,
just think it's funny because at least Optimus Prime was willing to fight. He displayed courage and he was willing to give his life for something he believed in. Truth be told, that black men of that era are long gone, to be real frank.
yeah,
So,
I would say there weren't that many from the jump.
and I would agree. I would absolutely agree. This was a very small percentage, but you don't need a large percentage.
I agree.
You only need a small percentage of folks. And again, this is why conversations like these are very important because this is all fun and games. You're talking about a villain everyone knows. Megatron probably goes in the pantheon of probably the top 5 villains in who live in infamy. He was willing to destroy a whole planet, entire universe to meet his ends. And
Yeah.
so, again, all of these are all about things that we see in our personal lives,
Mhm.
within our societies, within the culture. And so again, Megatron is very much representative of what we've historically have seen in Black America, and you can even argue in America in general. But
So, but before we continue next, we have a surprise person that has joined the panel. I didn't even know he was going to join right now, but we are joined by Logic's finest. Good
oh
sir, how are
Lord,
you
Oh
doing?
man.
for crying out loud.
How's it going, sir?
Well, I'm good. How is everyone?
Doing
Yeah,
good.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about with him. He comes in, he tries to he's all cool, he's all mellow. He changes the whole parameter of the panel where everybody's got nice and get along now. Yeah, I see. Nah, I'm not cool with that.
Well,
I,
I'm good. Unfortunately, I'm very late to the party, so I don't know what I missed.
no, I
So,
just jumped on probably about 10, 15 minutes ago, and they probably started maybe about 10 minutes before that. So that's
well, okay. So, since I'm late and I'm joining the conversation now, I am just going to hang back in the corner and talk amongst yourselves.
See,
Well,
see, see, see. There he is with that cool thing again. I can't take it, man. I gotta go. I gotta
oh,
go.
it's too funny.
I gotta go.
Well, this is a good transition then because I got this next article up, and I'm actually is going to talk a little bit of specifically of Megatron, and then we could jump back as far as the roundtable and talk about it. So actually, good sir, Logic Finance, you jump in a perfect time because now we'll go a little bit more in depth with Megatron because the last article we talked about Cybertron and how the Autobots considered it as paradise, but the Decepticons, they felt like society there was just static. There was no growth, and they felt like there needs to be a means of want or struggle in order to have some purpose in this paradise. And so that's what we last talked about. Now, in this particular article, we're going to kind of just focus more on Megatron and some of his thought process. And so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I really want to read kind of like this first section that you see here. And so it said, Megatron waged a battle to destroy the evil forces of the Senate. Then he continued to wage a war against the not so evil forces of freedom, organic life, and the very idea of an Autobot living. After some life-changing events, he waged a war against the evil forces of his own past legacy. Currently, however, Megatron's revolution has come full circle, waging a war against the evil forces of the Functionist Council. Megatron is a master planner, constantly a step ahead of any opponent and even ahead of what he wants now, preparing for anything he may want in the future. He has the physical might to overpower most foes, but it's his mind that has one up three primes and rival Decepticons. But his cold clinical nature is a front. He has to struggle to keep up, as he's quick to anger and quicker to use excessive violence as his answer to any problem. Megatron's trying to change, but he spent such a long time reveling in violence, it may have been a lost cause from the start. So here are two quotes from Megatron. He says, "So long as you stand in my way, so long as anyone stands in my way, I will respond by killing. Murder on an industrial scale. Because in the final analysis, I would happily wade across a river of corpses, chest deep in rust and grease and engine oil, just to crush the spark of the last Autobot standing. And I would not do so simply as a means to an end. No, I do it, Prime, because it would give me pleasure." And then this last quote, he says, "I once told Optimus that I killed for the sake of killing. I wanted to make him hurt me, you see, because when he hurts others, he hurts himself. And the thing is, when those words were in my head, I didn't think I meant them. But when they left my mouth, I realized that I did. If the world thinks you're a monster, what does it matter? The world is wrong. But when you start to think of yourself as a monster," and the quote ends there. So, gentlemen, the floor is yours once again.
So he's Dexter.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good comparison.
Well, personally, I'm not a fan of this particular backstory, um, because this backstory reduces him to little more of an irredeemable, completely evil character, which is why when we were making up this original list, I did not put on Darth Vader, because I love Vader. He's my favorite villain of all genres across all times, but he's a completely, totally irredeemable piece of evil. There is nothing there psychologically really to dissect. So where I'm going with this is this: I personally prefer the older backstory of Megatron. That being that he comes from the days when where the Autobots and the Decepticons were not enemies at all. Megatron's thing was, we need resources. We have to survive. We have the power to take those resources. Therefore, any action that I take or any of us take, no matter how cruel or violent toward those that we taking the resources from, they are justified because we have the power to take the resources that we need to live. There is nothing wrong with that. So if you disagree, then really you are against your own kind, because without resources, we don't survive. So why would you oppose me in obtaining the resources that we need to survive? So personally, that is the original backstory, the long running backstory behind Megatron that I prefer, because it's more complex, it's more psychological, and it happens to be a line of thinking that personally I agree from. Strength, power through strength.
Well, in that respect, that's literally that's literally Zod, to be quite frank. I
Hmm?
mean, that's General Zod.
Yes, yes, yes.
So and let me just say I agree with you with everything you said, because as it's already, if it hasn't been figured out already, I'm a purist when it comes to these concepts, because all the stuff that comes after has a tendency, at least in current day, the type of writing and stuff done for these characters now are just so off the mark. It's ridiculous. But what Sigma was reading was from a comic book, actually, and not the original comics. Because the original stuff, from Marvel, kept close to the animated series, so it stayed in the format that Logic is talking about.
Right.
The stuff that the stuff that Sigma was reading, if I'm correct, was IDW,
It is, which
Yeah.
I'm not a fan.
who already has a long history of damaging brands to the point that Hasbro literally pulled every license from them that they had. That's how bad it is.
Yeah.
Whether it be Transformers, GI Joe, you name it, they took it all back.
Oh, quick segue. IDW also somewhat damaged and tarnished one of my favorite Marvel brands, which Marvel has said they want to make a movie, but they can't because they don't own the rights. ROM Space Knight.
Yes. You got to understand everything in the last 15 to 20 years um has how can I put it, has been skewed um and pretty much thrown off where it comes to publications there,
Yes.
whether it be Transformers, ROM, GI Joe, Star Trek, yada yada yada. um because I can't speak too much on the company, so I'm just going to focus on just the writers itself.
Mhm.
Okay. And the writers are doing the same thing we see going on in other pop culture references, which is it becomes more about ideology instead of the characters and the fundamental aspect of the characters and the
Let's go
foundational
ahead and
story.
say Marvel. Go ahead and say Marvel and Star Wars. They destroyed my
Yes,
focus
Star Wars as well.
on.
Yes, Star Wars.
And
Yeah.
there,
But that's the point I'm making. It's
yes,
it's it's a cultural thing now. I mean, it
yes,
doesn't make a difference if we pick out comics, we pick out movies, we pick out TV shows. This is the zone we're in right now for the style of writing that's been going through. And of course, they longtime fans have been pushed off. Money's going down the drains, no profits being made. I never thought I'd live to see the day when a single issue of a comic book barely broke 30,000 copies sold, especially
yeah.
when especially between America and Canada alone. There's about 2 million fans.
You know,
So you know what I mean. So
yeah.
and we haven't even counted Puerto Rico, England, Paris, Australia. We haven't. This is just North America, America and Canada, easily 2 million, and you can't sell more than you can barely sell 30,000 copies, and that's across any brand. I don't care if it's Superman, Batman, Transformers, you name it. It's bad.
Because of that social ideology, and you were
Exactly.
talking about the destruction of characters, destruction of
Yeah.
vehicles.
Right.
Maybe because I'm partial, maybe because I've been a fan for well over 40 years now. No vehicle, none, not Star Wars, not Star Trek, nothing Marvel, nothing has been destroyed more than my, again, I'm biased, I'm partial, my all time number one favorite, Doctor Who. Because when you gender swapped the character with the explanation that as a race, they swap genders, on the face of it, that is utterly ridiculous. Then who is a mother? Who is a father? How do you have brothers and sisters? It's absolutely, utterly ridiculous. But when you look at the agenda being pushed across all forms of media, of all genres, you see where this deleterious effect is destroying everything. And really quick, Sigma Jones has a channel that he discusses everything World War II. So one show we discussed the Weimar Republic of Weimar Germany,
Yes, I saw that one. Yeah,
and
I saw that one.
SKC sent a private email to both of us and said, "Guys, I loved it. Weimar Germany. That's where the Bauhaus came from, and the artists and the musicians and the lifestyle and the culture and the fashion. To this day, it's completely changed the planet that we live on." But I was so inspired, I did more research. In the Weimar Republic, Weimar Germany, the last 4 years, the descent into decadence, where you had clubs that were gay clubs open, where there was male prostitution open, where there was drugs being sold open, where you had children as young as 6 years old prostituting themselves. And I said, SKC, give us a chance until next week because we're going to cover that. And the point being, the Weimar Republic shows what happened when you let everyone live their truth, speak their realness, express themselves however they want to be, and when taken to its fullest extreme, when you don't put limits on social decay, humanity descends into decadence and degradation, and society literally collapses. Weimar Germany was not the first, and they won't be the last. And we put that specifically to say America is literally following in the exact same footsteps of where Weimar Germany followed between 1920 to 1929.
Well, that's very much the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Bingo.
And, but
And
here's the ironic part about what you guys were saying and sort of this description of Megatron, because again, it totally deludes what Megatron was really about. The Megatron originally was about securing resources, and more importantly, he wanted to bring the Decepticons into some form of prominence because they started out in the lower caste systems. But the other part of it is that this description of him in his IDW article is that they basically turn him into a psychopath.
Right.
well, that's why I said Dexter.
Yeah,
I
he's
mean,
pretty much,
I mean, if you had asked me, if we had this conversation long before those books were published, I would have gave a different answer.
Mm.
yeah.
I would have given a completely different answer. Because depending on how you want to look at it, the original concept, a little bit of Doom, a little bit of Magneto, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But in the books that's been done in the last 15, 20 years, which unfortunately for anybody of that age, that's all they know of him. He's Dexter.
Yeah.
The funny thing about Transformers, about Generation One Transformers, what gets lost is the fact the Autobots lost that war.
Yes.
There was not a war being waged. What there was a resistance. The
Yeah.
few Autobots who chose to resist Megatron, there was a resistance because the Decepticons won. Megatron controlled Cybertron, and his goal then which was what his original goal was to go out to other planets and find the resources that they need to keep living because they were exhausting their natural resources left on Cybertron. So when I say that gets lost in everything, because Megatron was not the bad guy. You may disagree with his autocratic style of leadership. You may disagree with his heavy-handedness, but he was not a mindless psychopath. I just want to rule the world. I want to be a megalomaniac and just kill everything in sight. That was never his goal. And that's
Oh, I know. I know. Like I said, Eisen will tell you. That's why I have difficulty sometimes in conversations
Mhm.
because I got to jump back and forth between all these different versions in my head.
Right.
Because what you described to me is that's the Megatron I remember.
Right. Because we grew
You, you
well.
know, whether it be the animation stuff or the Marvel Comics version. That's what I know. So the other stuff that comes afterwards, I mean, I recognize it. I mean, I can speak partially on it, but for the most part, it's a null void to me. It's one of the reasons why when Eisen and I talk about Star Wars, yeah, I could talk about some of the movies, sure. But me, the comic book guy, when I can't speak to you on any comics outside of Marvel, it's a bad day.
The funny thing is when you talk Star Wars, again, you, um, Lawrence Guy, you put something in front of me that I had not thought about. Is that when I speak to these younger gentlemen, like we are now, I have to keep in mind they may not necessarily be as well versed with the older source material as you and I are. So when I have to keep in mind that when younger guys talk about Star Wars, they're thinking the prequels, they're thinking these most recent movies. When I'm talking Star Wars, I'm thinking Star Wars 77, Empire Strikes Back 80,
Yeah. Because
Return of the Jedi 83, and then I'm also
exactly.
thinking of all the books that became canon
Yeah,
because
that's me. The
George
books.
Lucas embraced all of it.
Yes, he did.
Therefore, it's all canon. He created Star Wars. So by him embracing it, it's all canon. So when
He's
you tell me
literally
Star Wars, that's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of the original Mandalorians who actually came from Coruscant, not
right.
Mandalore. Again, because I'm a fan of the original source material. So I know these things.
Right, and for the younger guys, I don't hold it against them. I really
Right.
don't.
Not
I
at
mean
all.
because we're all products of our generation.
Exactly.
It's just that simple,
And
you
that's my
know.
point.
Because I cannot take away from them the excitement of going to see the prequels
Hmm.
as if it's just the biggest thing in the world. But to me, the biggest thing in the world is when I stood practically almost peeing on myself to get in the theater in 1977. You know what I mean? So I mean, because I mean, from so much excitement on wanting to get in and see this movie. So
Right.
I mean, I get that. It's just that sometimes it makes it a little difficult in the conversation because you got to jump back and forth between time and styles. Because, like I said, the way writing was when we grew up is not the way writing is now.
You know,
You know, I mean, even when we were younger, the storytelling that they used for Megatron, and this goes for all of them, Megatron, Masters of the Universe, GI Joe, all the
hmm,
animated stuff.
right.
When we were younger, don't get me wrong, they did have little bits and pieces of ideology in there. They really did.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things that it only came in to enhance the story or progress it forward. It didn't become the end all be all. In other words, we didn't need 22 minutes with commercials about whether or not Megatron is into machines or into humans. I mean, yeah, because that had nothing to do with the story. So
Yeah.
we didn't do that kind of stuff. It didn't matter to us. We didn't need to know whether or not, you know, Lois and Clark had super sex or not. I mean, that didn't matter to us. You know, it's just like, did he fly through the air? Did he beat Brainiac? All right, let's go get Lex Luthor next. So,
You
you
know,
know, it's like and we talked about this last time. It's just, you know, every generation goes through a different style of writing tropes and concepts.
mm,
And unfortunately, the one we're in now is the worst of the lot, and
Yeah.
we just gotta ride it through until it burns itself out. And we
well,
are starting to see some changes. So
Yeah.
well, you know, it's funny that you say that. My daughter sent me a brilliant article, and um, I'm gonna go through my archives. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna email it to all of you. And it was speaking to the decline of the quality of shows because there's so many streaming services out now that every streaming service is screaming for content. So what's happening is the traditional Hollywood model has been blown apart. The traditional Hollywood model was you got hired on a show as a writer and you learned by being in that writer's room. If the show was a hit, by year 3 or 4, you moved up to become assistant writer. Then you moved on to another show where you got hired as a senior writer. That was a hit. Eventually, you became the head writer. And then you learned and studied under the executive producer who was the showrunner. So now you have 10, 15 years under your belt. Now
mhm,
you become a head writer consistently on shows, or you're given the keys to a Cadillac and you become a showrunner.
right.
Now, what they're saying is that model has been destroyed. So now what you have is a new writer who has 2 or 3 years in the business. They're being handed the keys to become a showrunner. So they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to run a show, and they
Well,
don't know
actually,
how to write good quality shows. So
actually,
that's why.
it's worse than that. It's worse than that. Actually, it's actually worse than that. I get what you're saying. I do, but it's actually worse than that because if you take comics for example, what they're doing now in comics is that they're giving jobs people to write characters just because they look like the character. That
Well,
and I mean literally that's it.
and
If
that
like say it's a mini series about Black Lightning, they will not let a seasoned writer who's been writing for decades do it. They will go outside and find somebody who is black and never had any writing credentials whatsoever and give it to them. I mean
which is
and they admitted it. They admitted
which
it
is
openly.
exactly which is exactly you took the words right out of my mouth, which was the next part of that article is that in the quest to find streaming content, granted, women and black writers and Asian and Hispanic writers have been traditionally kept out of those roles. But now what you're seeing in a backlash, writers who should be assistant writers are now being promoted to head writer, and some of them are even given the job as a showrunner for no other reason than they're black or they're a woman or they're Spanish
Right.
or they're Asian or they're trans. And again,
Yeah.
I have no issue with any of that. The point is they have not had the opportunity to study under established successful writers and showrunners to learn the craft and to then themselves create quality content. So we're seeing across the board on all genres what you're getting now is crap, it's ideology, and it's pushing of agendas.
What the problem is that, and here's what's interesting about that. There's no need for it because they're like I said, they're doing it on purpose out of spite. They want to destroy the original fan base. Because here's the thing: you go out and okay, this person over here is transgender. We're going to give him a job writing this transgender character. They have no skill. So now you went from a book that used to sell 80,000 copies to now selling 20,000 copies because the writing is bad. And then when somebody says something, you want to call us toxic, and then you want to label us as being, you know, it's this or phobic that or whatever. But here's the thing. Well, we're trying to give trans people the opportunity. See, that's where you're lying because I've been collecting comics since the 60s. And I'm telling you, one of the most legendary runs in comics ever done was Doom Patrol, and that was by Rachel Pollock in the 80s, and that is a trans. So you're not going to sit here and look at me in my face and tell me that it wasn't possible. You're not going to sit here and tell me there's been no gay characters when I've looked at Marvel and DC again since the 60s. I can name five of them off the top of my head. You're not going to sit here and tell me black characters can't be the you know, they do all this race and gender swapping. And then I have to ask them, and I've had this conversation with professionals. I actually have. What was the point in race swapping? Well, we're trying to promote, you know, black characters, yada yada. But you already have Black Lightning. You already have Thunder. You
You
already
already
why
have the Black Panther,
what,
the first
yeah,
black character.
why are you not pushing these characters forward that are already here? If you're really truly quote unquote trying to push representation, it's just like Captain Marvel the movie. Brie Larson playing Captain Marvel made no sense because before that character was Captain
Captain
Marvel.
Marvel.
My
Exactly.
no, yeah, but in between that, there was a black female Captain Marvel before this one, Monica Rambeau, but they turned her into a sidekick to the white one in the movies. Now,
Bingo.
if you're so big on representation, why did you go that route?
Well,
That's what I'm saying. This is something they do purposely, and bringing it back to Megatron. That's why we have that stuff in the article that Sigma just read. They have no interest on creating stories. What they're trying to do is they're trying to tear down the heroic ideal because the heroic ideal, and let's be honest about this, nothing personal because I know some of them are out there, but in all honesty, the vast majority of these pop culture icons that are collected and read are predominantly by men. So if
Mhm.
you tear down the heroic ideal and you keep pushing propaganda for okay, Superman's gay now, this, that, and etc. and so on. You're tearing down that heroic ideal, and eventually, especially for the younger kids like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, who are getting into comics or animation or anime or whatever, you're brainwashing them, and we need to call it for what it is,
Well,
because
it's indoctrination. Now,
yeah, there you go. That's the word I was looking
you
for. Yes.
speak to an excellent point because I have made this point for years. If you tell me that Women and minorities have been excluded from the roles as writers and creators. Yes, true, they have. And if you tell me that they are every bit as creative as white men who have historically had these roles, fine, great. So far, I'm with you. Now, my thing is this: give them the opportunity. I'm with you. Let them be as creative as traditional white men. I'm with you. But we're not seeing that. What we're seeing is you want to remake the world. You want to make everyone white, black, everyone male, female, and you all you want to do is just remake the world out of spite, as you said.
Right.
So it is such a knee-jerk reaction because you don't want women and minorities to actually be creative. You just want to remake the world, which is one of my biggest problems with feminism and this trans agenda. The agenda, not so much the equality and rights, the agenda and the feminism, and this recreating of characters, the race swapping and the gender swapping and the culture swapping. You're not being creative. So if you want to tell me, instead of making traditional male heroes now female, or making white heroes black or Asian, why not do the same thing that those white male creators did? Create a new character. And if it's good, it's going to take off.
Because they're angry.
Yeah,
Because you have to remember, some of the most legendary black characters ever created were made by white dudes.
they were all made by white people.
So
Yeah.
I mean,
Stan Lee
I mean, I
created
mean,
the
I
Black
mean,
Panther. Stan
yeah,
Lee created
yeah.
Luke Cage.
Tony Isabella, Black Lightning.
There
I
you go.
mean, yeah, I mean, seriously, and that's all it really is.
McFarlane
But
Spawn.
yeah,
Hmm.
and just like when I get into to debates about that, no strong black women. Okay, you've never watched Buffy. You've never watched Terminator Judgment Day. You never watched Aliens. You never watched I Spit on Your Grave. I
And I
mean,
know a
dude,
show that you
now now now,
don't
now
that you guys are not aware of. It's
you
called
didn't you
Lucky
didn't you didn't
Seven. It's
you didn't
from
watch
England.
you didn't watch Princess Leia. Now, mind you, I just literally went back decade by decade all the way to the 70s. So you
Yep.
can't so you sitting here saying they didn't exist is insane.
It's insane. But you're right because it's not about fairness. It's not about equity. It's not about giving people a chance. It's about remaking the world out of spite because you are angry. So you're not being creative, because then what you're giving us is crap. Because you if you want if you want to be creative, you cannot tell me when I look at you know what perfect example is Marvel. When I look at the storylines and the plots that Marvel Comics had, they were more creative, they were more inventive, and they were much more cerebral and grounded than all the crap and the filth that you're seeing now. So you're telling me that these young writers, whether they be black, they're women, they're trans, they're Spanish, they're Asian, great, but they're not giving us content that is as creative and inventive and cerebral as what we used to get. So either you're not getting the right people, or you're so busy pushing the agenda that everything has been destroyed. So now I understand. I freely admit I am no longer a part of the 21 to 45 demographic. Not happy about it, but it is what it is. I
I,
know I am outside of that demographic, so I understand you want the younger audience. The problem is my lament is that you younger guys have been saddled with crap for so long that your bar has been set so low that you accept this nonsense.
There's a couple of things. Like okay, first Marvel. Marvel suffers from a variety of things. The first one is like I said, hiring people just because of what they look like instead of the merit in their capabilities.
Diversity
S-
hires.
Exactly. The second thing is that this was started just a little bit, I would say around 2012 with Axel Alonso and Joe Quesada, and both of them are gone now. And the third part is that they're hacks because they're not creating anything original. They're rehashing old stories and trying to push them off like they adding something new to it, and it always ends up badly. You cannot redo the Dark Phoenix saga. You just can't. Okay, it's just that simple. But the other thing is that it's one of those situations where it doesn't. Again, it's just one of those situations where we're just gonna have to we have to roll through it because, like I said, the writing styles change eventually. And there was something else I was gonna say, and I can't remember. But before you say anything, Logic, and I might be wrong, but then haven't you been trying to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to get out that
Yeah, I'm sorry.
you good, you good. I just wanted to get out that the only thing that has been done decently, well, I would say good story wise, was what they did with Thanos with the MC universe. His reasoning for resources and survival. That's the only thing I can think of that they have done anything good with.
But you know what's
Um,
Well,
sad about but you know what's sad about that?
yes.
What's
I'm good.
sad about that is that in order to get that story, they used three different storylines from three different authors, and none
Right.
of them are from the current crop of writers they have now.
thank
And I
you,
won't argue that a bit.
thank you,
I won't
I
thank
argue
mean,
that
you,
a bit.
thank you.
Yeah.
the most recent one you got is Jonathan Hickman
Hmm.
doing Infinity, which was like I want to say 2014. But other than that, everything else was the 80s from
Yeah.
Jim Starlin, George Perez,
Yes,
Thanos Quest,
but see,
Infinity Gauntlet, and Infinity War.
Right.
but
Right.
here's the thing, and we discussed this when we were talking about Magneto,
Yeah.
is that um, they they took four different storylines and merged bits and pieces to make those two quote unquote last two films. That whatever they called it, Infinity
Dark Phoenix,
War
I
and
think.
no,
Oh, okay. I get what you're talking about.
Infinity
Yeah.
War and Endgame. But
Yes.
the thing is, you're giving credit there, Eisen, where it's literally not due.
Yeah.
That
No. No. Yeah.
story goes back from the comics. That was originally from the comics. Thanos's um, driving thought. He wanted, in fact, you know what? Let me roll that back. That goes back to the Infinity Gauntlet. It
Hmm.
was it was Mistress Death, and Mistress Death. Her thinking was there were more people alive now than there ever were. So Thanos, in an attempt to please her, went out and gathered all of the Infinity Gems, not stones, Infinity
Right.
Gems, and then killed half the population of the entire universe to please her.
Right.
So again, bits and pieces, bits and pieces.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to talk to you specifically about, Lawrence Guy, is, have you seen or are you familiar with this new show on Paramount called Strange New Worlds, the new Star?
Of
Now,
course I
now,
have.
now,
Mm-hmm.
before you even answer, I gave up on that show, and the reason why I did was, as you said a few minutes ago, it's a rehash. I'm sitting there looking at every episode of Strange New Worlds, and it's a rehash of original series episodes. I mean, I can sit here and name you the episodes from the 60s, every one so far. And
Yeah.
Alex Kurtzman is a
Hack,
hack. He's a
hack.
hack
Well, you can,
because,
but you can see it. I mean, look at when he tried to redo the Mummy with Tom Cruise.
yeah,
I mean,
hack,
Alex Kurtzman's always been a hack. And as far
hack.
as it goes for Strange New Worlds, here's one of the unfortunate things about us not having our private information shared. Because if we did, I would have told you never to turn it on.
Mm.
Because no, and I'll tell you why. And I'm being totally honest with you. I'm not interested in watching Sheldon in space.
Wow.
Mm.
Because you can't
Mm.
you cannot tell me they don't write Mr. Spock like he's Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory.
listen, listen.
I have no interest in that.
When I saw the first episode, I'm sitting there watching it and I'm saying, okay, this is the episode, a piece of the action from the original series. Then
Hmm.
the second episode, I'm like, okay, this is the episode for I have touched the sky and the world is hollow from the original episode,
Hmm.
from the original series. The next episode, I'm saying, wait, hold on, this is the naked time from the original series. The next episode with the Gorn. Okay, this is a rehash of my favorite episode of Star Trek of all time,
Mhm.
Balance of Terror. Wait, all this hack is doing is literally rehashing episodes from the original series, which is the same exact thing of all people Gene Roddenberry did when he made season 1 of Next Generation. All he did was rehash episodes from the original series, which
Right,
he of
yeah.
all people created.
Which unfortunately is, I hate to say it, but it's fortunate in the respect of the production that he got ill. And I hate to say that about somebody, but when he got ill, he finally released the reins to Ronald D. Moore and the rest of them, and that's where we got the stuff we have now, and which is great. The problem with Strange New Worlds, outside of simply copying what's already been done, but it's also one of those things where they're screwing the timeline
Again,
because, like the episode with the Gorn, nobody knew about the Gorn until Kirk. So you just rewrote the timeline
yep,
again,
again.
and when you do stuff like that, you destroy canon. And look, I know a lot of creators hate the idea of continuity because it makes them constricted. But continuity also has the ability to force you to be a better writer, to come up with more ingenious ways of telling a story and pushing forward the directive and the tone and the
It's
quality of the characters and the overall production.
It's all
But
being
but
lazy, is what it
right,
comes down to, because a
and
good
you
writer knows how to create within a framework. It's not that you're
exactly
constricted, it's just that you want to create your own reality. So, what you need to
right.
do is go somewhere else, because a good writer can work within a framework and still be creative.
Well, see, I would disagree on one thing you said, and that might be just because of the way I'm interpreting it. When you said they need to go somewhere else, I don't think they need to go somewhere else. I think they need to go make their own. because
Mm,
because because from my perspective as a fan of Star Trek, how deeply it hurt me to let Star Trek go. I wouldn't wish that on anybody else who's a fan of another franchise. They
now,
don't need to go. They don't need to go someplace else. They need
now
to
you
go
know
make
how
their.
I feel about Doctor Who, because that's
Oh,
how I
dude,
feel about Doctor
dude,
Who.
Same way
dude,
for me
dude.
as Star Wars.
Yeah,
Okay.
Doctor Who. Yeah, Doctor Who is my second. I mean, when I talk about Doctor Who, I was in the Doctor Who. See, everybody talks about Doctor Who, Tom Baker. I was in it. I'm old enough to remember John Pertwee.
I got you.
You see what I'm saying? So I was into Doctor Who long before Baker and all this other stuff. I mean, John Pertwee was my doctor. You know what I'm saying?
I
So
got you. Well,
so so so
Baker is
Doctor
mine
Who's my second.
from 77. But
Right? Yeah, because Baker
again,
took over. Yeah, because Baker took over for Pertwee after he left. Yeah.
a lazy writer uses tropes, and the first thing he does is the classic tropes. Um, make this destroy canon. Um, the lone survivor, the last of his kind. And I mean, to name the lazy tropes, and you're seeing it across all vehicles,
Oh
across
yeah.
all sci-fi.
Look,
And
when you
when
when,
you're lazy, again, you know what? In fact, since we're talking about Strange New Worlds, first
oh
of
no,
all,
you're talking about it. I'm not talking about.
okay, we're gonna
I know,
fine.
no, I'm saying feel free, but I'm just saying I don't care about it. So
Okay, see, um, Chief Kyle was a middle-aged Irishman. Now he's a Gen Z Asian man. Unhappy about that. The bridge crew of the Enterprise in the original
Mm.
series was all men and Lieutenant Uhura. The
mhm.
bridge crew now is all women and Captain Pike. And one of those women is a they them with a butch haircut.
Yeah.
And on top of all of that, on top of all of that, one of the bridge crew, the security chief, is a direct blood descendant of
Hmm.
Khan Noonien Singh.
Yeah,
So
I heard
you've
about that.
messed up the timeline yet again.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And
Hmm.
that was my point.
That's
It's
why I've
because
walked away from that
yeah.
show. I walked away.
Yeah. So like I said, I would have told you not even to flip the switch, man. I would
Yeah.
have told you don't even tune in. Seriously.
Yeah.
because it's gotten to the point now, and I'm sure Eisen would agree with me on this. I don't care what they tell me, I'm not going to believe them anymore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know you agree with it, and you know, it was. I only looked at the first episode of it, and you know, you know, I understand where you guys are coming from after, especially after seeing Enterprise, and I'm going through the original series now because I never got to see all of them,
Oh,
but. Enterprise, I think it's going to end up probably being my favorite because it was just so fun,
okay.
I'm
and
glad you liked it. I'm glad you liked it.
and
Seriously.
I
when
liked
you
it.
talk about how with the timeline and everything, the workaround they got with the going was when they made the mirror universe. They made,
Yeah.
you know, a completely different timeline that wasn't, you know, it had nothing to do with that timeline. It was a completely different universe. And so that's where they introduced a new concept and new different things. But it made it, but those three, I think it was 3 episodes, it made it fun. And but I completely get what you
Well,
guys are going through.
I just want to stop you there for 1 second.
Oh
The
yes.
concept of the mirror universe comes from the original series. There
Oh, it
was
does.
an
Okay.
episode. Yeah, there's an episode. I believe it's called Mirror Mirror, where
No, it's called
um,
it's called Mirror Darkly, isn't
in
Okay.
the
it?
mir-
Isn't it Mirror Darkly?
no, A Mirror Darkly is the episode from Enterprise. The
Oh,
episode
okay,
from
okay,
the
okay.
original series is called Mirror Mirror.
Okay.
That's right. That's right.
That's
That's
where
right. That's where we
Captain
got.
Kirk goes into the mirror universe
That's where we got
Yeah,
Mr.
I hadn't
Spock
gotten
with
there
the
yet.
goatee. That's the
with
Mr. Spock with
Yeah.
the
with
goatee.
the
Yeah,
Yeah,
I hadn't
yes,
yeah.
got.
correct,
Yeah, I
correct.
hadn't gotten there yet.
But Eisen, I did not mean to cut. I did not
You
mean to
good?
cut you off. Apologies. Please continue.
Yeah, no, you're good.
But
But yeah, you know, just you know, that writing there in Enterprise was so wonderful. I could get how Star Trek fans, original Star Trek fans, uh their views on what's being created now. I understand it completely being a Star Wars fan, being, you know, me, you know, seeing the original three that came out, and then also on top of that, having God, I don't know how many books I've got. It's a
yeah,
ridiculous amount.
If
Uh,
you ever get a chance, and these are just my personals from the original series, check out the episodes The Naked Time.
okay.
Check out um, Balance of Terror,
oh no, he's watching all of them. He's going in sequential order.
The Enterprise. Oh, okay.
Oh no, he already did Enterprise. He's
Yeah,
doing the
yeah, I
original
finished
series.
Enterprise.
Yeah,
I've
he's
watched
doing the original.
all of
He's
them.
doing the original series now.
Yeah,
Okay.
now I'm on the original
But
series now.
my point is the quality of the writing from a show in the 1960s
Mhm.
is still on par or better than much of what you see today.
Okay.
And since we're talking about inclusion and diversity,
DC
the
Fontana.
original, yes, you,
I knew you
yes,
was gonna go
we're
there.
on the same wavelength. Yes, we
Yeah,
are, because DC Fontana, you will see her name on every episode. She was the senior script editor, which means she approved or rewrote every single episode of the original series. And
Mm,
she herself wrote, I want to say, 2 episodes.
cool.
DC,
one of the
Dorothy Fontana.
yeah, one of the most
DC Fontana.
actually the most favorite episode ever of the original series
Mhm.
was The Guardian, was it not? The one with Joan Collins?
That was not the favorite. That's the only one that actually won an Emmy Award from
Right,
the
and
original
that
series.
and that was DC Fontana.
Mm.
Wow.
And that goes back to what I was saying about this whole thing about
City
never
on the
being
Edge of
included.
Forever, I believe, is the name of
See,
the
yeah,
episode.
there you go. City on the Edge Forever. The
Dude, I'm a
device,
Star Trek
the,
fan.
the device was the Guardian.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
right.
Guardian of Forever.
Of forever. Yep. So yeah. So I mean, like I said, this thing about whether they've been included or not is just nonsense. You know. So I don't know, but
Yeah.
but I think we hijacked Sigma's stream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blame
So,
me.
No.
Blame me. I'm gonna sit back down in my corner, talk amongst yourselves.
and I was gonna say, to bring it back, when your point on Megatron on the original version was, you know, about him doing what was needed for survival. I mean, the you know, creating villains with a logical, even though they're having to go to some extremes, but about being survival where you can actually relate. Um, they just do away with that with villains now and just do this whole sociopath thing to where there is no philosophical battle between them and the protagonist to make it interesting anymore.
You want to know what's interesting about what you just said?
Yes, sir.
You are 100% correct. And here's the reason why. Because all the writers now write the villains as if it's them. So we actually get to see the insight of the person writing.
That
Even in Marvel comics today, if you read them, they write the villains as the good guy, and not understanding that the villain is a good guy, but not the way they think.
Mm.
So they say because what they do is they self-reflect in that character. That's why they have this thing about taking all the heroes and tearing them apart and destroying the heroic ideal because they want to lean more towards the villain ideal. But the problem is they don't understand you cannot do that with a villain because the villain at the end of the day is a darker reflection of the hero. So you gotta have the other one.
can you repeat that, please, for all those who that might have gone over their head? Just please repeat that.
I said you cannot write the villain without the hero because the villain is a darker reflection of the hero. There's a
Bingo.
reason. There's a reason. Von Doom and Reed Richards. There is a reason in Lex Luthor and Superman. There's a reason for Magneto and Professor X, and the list goes on and on and
This
on.
goes on and on
Correct.
and on and on.
And even if you want to go so far as Spider-Man, who has so many different versions in the comics, each one of those villains is an aspect of Spider-Man's personality.
Look
Mm.
at Spider-Man's greatest enemy, the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn. And
Yeah.
what did Uncle Ben tell Peter Parker? With great power
Oh,
comes great responsibility.
Hmm.
So when Norman Osborn, what did he do? His great power, he used it for the exact opposite. Again, an
Hmm.
aspect,
Yep.
the best quote unquote when you're writing villains. So from a writer's standpoint, a
Yep.
writer always has to have conflict. There has to be tension. That's how a writer writes good drama. So there is a beautiful documentary about the making of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Gene Roddenberry's concept was Klingons are now friends, Romulans are friends, everyone's happy, the universe is at peace. And the writers said, well, I can't write drama like that. There has to be
Hmm.
conflict. That's what makes drama. So Rick Berman
Yep.
was
mm.
the voice of reason,
Yes,
and Rick
sir.
Berman saved Gene Roddenberry from himself
Yes, he
because
did.
the network was about to fire Gene Roddenberry and take that show off the air. Rick Berman, behind the scenes, saved Gene Roddenberry from himself. And the second brilliant thing he did was he bought a story from an up and coming writer named Ronald D. Moore.
Yep. Yep. And it wasn't just
Mm.
Ronald D. Moore either. I think about maybe the end of the second season, third season, they finally got Brandon Braga.
Yes, Brandon Brackett,
Who,
and
who,
also
who,
um the the showrunner for Deep Space Nine. And I know
yep. Yep.
amongst Trek fans, it doesn't get the love because it was serialized instead of episodic, but that was a very
I
good
don't
show.
care. Deep Space Nine is legendary to
It
me.
was a very good
You,
show
you
because
know,
that is how you write serialized television. And it
you
was
know,
a
I.
master
My
class.
bad.
And Ronald D. Moore cut his teeth, and that's where he gave us the magnificent magnum opus brilliance that is his Battlestar Galactica.
I
Hmm.
was gonna say, I guess I don't know as many, but I have yet to hear an actual Star Trek fan, crap on Deep Space Nine. But that's just me.
Oh,
I'm telling you,
my
Deep Space
friend.
Not, I
Nine is
said I don't. I must
legendary.
not know as many, but
It
yeah,
gets a
It's
lot of hate.
legendary.
It gets a lot of hate.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it gets a lot of hate from Star Trek fans, and it's
And the
funny
reason
because
for and the reason for that hate, and here's the interesting part, it's not even that they dislike it because of it being Star Trek. They dislike it because they said it went against the bright, shiny future that Gene Roddenberry promoted. That was it.
yes, yes,
oh
and
wow.
I
and
no no
here's
I kid you not. That was the complaint. That's all there was. There was
it,
it. Nobody had a problem with the characters. Nobody had a problem with it being in space. Nobody had a problem with it being Starfleet. It was just that, as far as they're concerned, it's too dark for what Gene Roddenberry was trying to promote. That was the only complaint.
The funny
Gotcha.
thing about that is, and you know what? I'm gonna stop because we, we've hijacked
Again,
the initiative
Again.
again, and it's my fault. It's my fault. Blame me. I'm putting my mic on mute. I'm I'm putting myself on timeout.
No,
maybe,
no,
maybe, maybe if Sigma is so kind, maybe he'll just do a general stream where we can just get up here and talk about everything pop culture as a whole.
This state this state of the union on our childhood memories and shows
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
content. Yeah.
you
yeah.
know what? That might actually be a good idea for a new series. I'll definitely have to pin that one down for a future series. But no, this honestly, I'm taking everything in like a sponge. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna let everybody rock. I'm just gonna sit in the back, just pay attention, see what's going on. The panel in the chat, I was enjoying it. So I
Okay.
was like,
Oh,
Well,
it. If anything, it still kind of ties in regards to philosophy of Megatron. Because I mean, if you look at the fact that modern culture is trying to push an agenda to try to have some sort of utopia. And when I'm saying that, I'm talking about as far as America trying to have this utopia type of thinking. That's where Megatron's like, nah, your type of utopia is not what I want. It's not what I'm looking for. So, I mean,
hmm.
to me, it all just kind of ties in together. So that's why I was like, I'm gonna let you guys rock. I'm enjoying it.
Well, like I said, it's just one of those things where, like I said, where Megatron is concerned, at least for me. Like I said, after the Marvel comics and the animated show, have I collected the comics? Yes. Have I read them? No. Because, like I
Mm,
said, the stuff I was hearing about it and et cetera and so on, it's just from a collector perspective. I have no
mm.
interest in it as a story or something that I would enjoy or anything like that. So I'm pretty much tapped out on what I could say about them, to be honest with you. And I don't really think there's anything, at least for me, left to say about him. Do I agree with him? I'm split down the middle. I understand the direction he's coming from, but when we start going into the power for the sake of power, that's where it shifts for me. Because for villains, I don't have villains going after the concept of acquiring power as long as there's a purpose for that power, not just for the sake of power. That's a boring story to me. That means whoever's writing it ran out of ideas, in my opinion, because now you're just trying to present me with
Good
either
point.
a psychopath or a sociopath. It's just
Right.
somebody it's like somebody just going out there collecting stuff with no purpose behind it, and that's not a good villain to me.
it's funny that you say that because when I was younger, um, I did not get a chance to see Transformers Beast Wars in its first run. I got a chance to see it in reruns in the early 2000s. And I really liked it. I really, really liked it because to me, it wasn't G1 Transformers. For me, nothing will ever be as good as G1 Transformers, but I liked it. Now, looking back, and there was something from the end of, I think, the first season or the second season. So, make a long story short, Ravage gets repurposed by the Autobots, and he's now basically their form of a lawman, a policeman. He comes to prehistoric Earth, and his job is to take this new Megatron back to Cybertron to stand for his crimes. And what he tells him is, "You are a pale shadow of the original Megatron, the one that I served under, the one who I fought with. You are a mindless megalomaniac, and you're so blind that you just want power for the sake of power. That's never what the Decepticons were about. We were about control. Yes, controlling Cybertron, controlling our resources, shaping our destiny. You are just a, a plain two-dimensional caricature." And when he said that, that hit me like, wow, you're right. He is he's a pale shadow of the original Megatron. Wow. And the next season got all kind of spacey and weirdy and pseudoscience life form thing with the spark is now some sort of tree of life from like the Macross saga from Robotech. But the point is, when he said that, it really made me reflect on the fact that this new version of Megatron in Transformers Beast Wars, he's a megalomaniac, power just for the sake of power. He doesn't care who or what he destroys in his path as long as he gets what he thinks is the power he should have. That is
And
his
you know, and,
goal in and of itself, with for no other purpose. And
and
that's
here's the and here
dumb.
and here's the problem with that.
Hmm.
Here's the problem with that concept.
Hmm.
There's no end goal.
Yes. Bingo.
You understand what I'm saying? See,
Yes.
look, we know Doctor Doom is megalomaniacal as all get out. We know Doom is always in a quest for power, but Doom has an end goal. His
Right.
end goal is that he doesn't believe anybody else can rule the world, keep it safe, make it productive, etc., and so on. But whom? No one will be a greater ruler than Doom. Okay, so and you can even see it how he has Livaria set up, and everybody's prosperous, regardless of whether or not they terrified of him. But the country's prosperous, like he said it would be. So in that respect, Doom is right. He is better. But with Megatron, there's none of that. Like I said, if you go out there and you collect all the toys, after you collected all the toys, now what?
Mm.
There's no end goal. I mean,
Yeah.
there's literally no end goal. So what do? Move planet to planet to planet to planet, collecting all the toys and taking everything. Eventually, you're going to run out of planets. There's no end goal. So and we talked about this with Magneto. There's an end goal here. There is a purpose
Hmm.
behind acquiring that power. There's a purpose behind wielding that power. I'm sometimes good, sometimes bad, but there must be a purpose. The new version of Megatron has no purpose other than just, I mean, he exists for nothing but destruction. That's not a good villain to me. Anybody
Exactly.
can
Well,
destroy anybody can destroy stuff.
Right.
and you know what, Lawrence? Even last month when we talked about Sasuke Eisen, even he had an end goal from his purpose of power. He believed that hey, in the world of Soul Society, nobody's running the society. Like it's just a free for all. And so he's like, well, hey, if somebody's going to become king of this society, why not be me?
But that's
It,
why
it,
but see, but that's why I like Eisen Sama. And I've said this
mm,
before. Even though I don't know anything about him, just the basic information you guys gave me can put together a concept in my head that I can associate him. Because as if you guys remember, he comes across to me as Professor Moriarty.
Yeah.
yep.
Yes.
Mm.
So at the very least, I got that. The new way they're writing Megatron, I got nothing to compare that to. I got nothing to do. I mean, even Galactus destroying planets has a purpose. It's because he hungers. It's because he's a universal balance for people to live life and etc. And so we've seen that.
But see, even there, it's he was the universal balance for against the Celestials, because
Correct.
putting aside the filth that was that film,
Mm.
Galactus was the balance against the Celestials from the
Right.
comics, because
Right.
he would, by feeding on the planets that the Celestials would use to birth others, he prevented their numbers from becoming too large and then usurping the reality of this universe, which
Exactly.
goes back to the backstory of Galactus and this current universe and the Celestials, which again brings me back to my point. That story was more creative and more
Hmm.
inventive than that mindless filth from that film that was released last year. I
I
mean,
had to re.
I could go through the
I had
whole backstory, but it might
no,
bore some
don't
people.
don't don't because I'll go to sleep. I had to watch it 3 times.
Wait,
No,
you
no,
watched
no,
that Guardians of the Galaxy 2, 3 times?
no. I'm talking about Eternals.
Okay. Oh, got you.
I watched it, and the
Oh
only
yeah, I
reason
didn't
is
even
because,
try.
and the only reason is because I kept falling asleep.
Yeah,
I kept missing stuff, so I had to look at it again.
it's
And
Yeah.
I don't, I don't know. I don't know what was worse, the writing, the concept, acting, or all of the above. And I mean, you just that was the weirdest choice of
And,
characters to pick up.
and honestly, Lauren, as somebody, I'm gonna be honest. I've never heard of Eternals until I saw the trailer for it, and I can tell you, even when I saw the trailer, it did not spark any interest in me. There was nothing to me. It's like, I want to see what this is about.
The
Like the whole
Well,
Eternals,
trailer.
yeah, but but
the
but in
Eternals were
all
never
fairness,
a huge title. They were
they never
known
they never were
they were
never were.
known to longtime Marvel Comics readers like Lawrence and myself, but
Right.
A niche
they were
category.
never a large title.
Actually,
Yeah.
actually, it was the last hoorah of Jack Kirby at Marvel.
Oh
Yes, it
wow.
was.
Okay.
So because
When it came
that's
back, yeah.
right, because he took the concepts he had originally tried to do over at DC with New Gods and try to put it in the Eternals after they let him go. But what's interesting is what Sigma has said about not knowing anything about those characters. And here's the thing: we that can't at least for the cinematic universe, that can't even be used as an excuse because nobody knew who the Guardians of the Galaxy were either.
True.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
but
I mean, you had to be like me in Logic. You had to be a
a
comic fan,
die-hard
True.
comic fan to know the
and
Guardians of
and
the
and and
Galaxy.
and and even the version they're using now is not the original.
No, it is not at all because
So so
Star
so
Wars is
so yeah. So we can't even use the excuse that you didn't know who they were. Bottom line is, it was a piss poor movie.
it was a bad movie. Now it's funny that you say that because Guardians of the Galaxy was lightning in the bottle. It was the number one movie in 2014,
Yep.
highest rated. It actually was the highest grossing. It was lightning in a bottle. And I say that because when you look at the totality of James Gunn's work, he lucked into making a good movie because
Yeah,
the
he did.
second one was not good.
Trash.
We were still high off of the fumes from the first one, but it was
Hmm.
not a good movie. It was all over the place. It was sloppy. They teased Adam Warlock, which we didn't even get.
Ah
So
man.
if you look at the totality of his work and you look at everything else that he has done, I'm glad that because Feige stepped down and gave James Gunn his role to be in control. He was to be the creative director of the MCU. But
Hmm.
when those tweets came out, he stepped back into the role. It's a good thing that he did because James Gunn, listen, he lucked into one good film, and one good film should not give you the creative role. But even with that said, personally, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. As a whole, I'm generally down on the Marvel movies. The Winter Soldier was the best out of all of them on
Thank you,
everything,
sir. Thank you,
and
sir.
Iron Man, the first one, is the second best, and after that, everything is a hit or miss. And generally,
Hmm.
I'm down on them.
Well, see, the thing about James Gunn, and I agree with you, he lucked in, and the only reason he lucked into it is because it was a good screenplay. The
Yes.
writing, the writing saved him on the first one, but
Yes.
you can prove that he's not good because after the first one, the second one was okay, nothing to write home about, and then after that, it went downhill with Suicide Squad.
Suicide Squad was awful trash.
You,
Oh
you,
my
you-
Yeah,
The
but you see what I'm saying. He doesn't really have. From the first Guardians, and you keep going down, it keeps getting
Mhm.
progressively worse.
Worse, worse,
Yeah.
worse.
first
So the question becomes: is what happens with Volume 3 of the Guardians of the Universe, especially with this crap trailer they're showing with Thor: Love and Thunder,
which I'm
because
not going to see. I'm
yeah,
telling you
because
right now,
yeah,
I
because the
am not
Guardians are in
going to see
that.
that.
Yeah.
Uh
Here's the
So
oh
thing.
my bad.
When I say, have you looked at James Gunn's work? I have looked at his work. Suicide Squad is the, the
it's
level of
abysmal.
quality of his work. It was abysmal,
I
but
believe that. I
that's the
believe that.
level of his work. I've
Yeah, I can
taken
believe
the
that.
time to do the research. I've looked at his other works. That's what he does. That Suicide Squad film that he made, that's his work. That's what he does.
Mm.
He
Mhm.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 was lightning a bottle. It was
Yeah.
the right movie. He was in the right place at the right time. Things came together. That
Yeah.
film was not because of him.
Well, it's like I said, it's the writing.
Yeah.
And I dare say the second one, the writing saved him on that too. You were gonna say something, Lyson?
Yeah, I was gonna say also, I would say the nostalgia of also the music selection too. I think with the timing of it of the first one and everything, I think yeah, it was like it was a whole lot of lightning in the bottom of
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
that.
Because
Everything just kind of fell into place.
yeah, because for like people like me and Logic, oh, he had us with the soundtrack. Oh yeah.
Yes, me
I
too.
mean, I mean, I,
Me
I,
too.
I mean,
I
I mean,
agree.
I mean, that, yeah, I mean, that was our childhood. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I'm not that old, but I
I
do know that
mean,
music.
yeah,
So yes,
yeah, but me and Logic, we were there when they first came out on the charts. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
got you.
So,
Got you.
so he pulled us in real good with that, and he tried to replicate it in the second one. And again, the soundtrack is better than the second one, but but it was still serviceable, I guess, for lack
Yes.
of a better terminology. But Suicide Squad, man, all you have to look at the editing of it.
Oof.
Well,
It was hack-eyed, man. It really was.
I mean, it
I
it's Suicide Squad, and it was supposed to be gritty. Um,
if you want to see a good Suicide Squad, and I have this conversation with my daughter, and it's always a wonderful conversation because she's my daughter. She's in her 20s, but when it comes to here's the thing. So I have schooled my daughter on the fact that for years, Marvel Comics was the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and DC was the redheaded stepchild that could do nothing right. That's the way that it was until animation came around. Because
mm,
when it comes to the animation,
Mm.
DC has that on lockdown. Marvel can't even
Hmm.
Yeah.
touch
Hmm.
DC animation
Yeah.
yes,
That's
agreed.
true.
That's correct.
touch
That's
it
Yeah,
That's
correct.
true.
That is
at
correct.
all.
That is
Now,
correct.
for some reason, DC never wanted to make a coherent universe like Marvel did. The animation is separate from the live action shows, which are also separate from the films. Even the films are separate from each other. With all of that, if you want to see a real good Suicide Squad, what it's supposed to be, there are two animated movies that are very good. That is the Suicide Squad, not the two pieces of toilet trash
mm.
that we've seen on the silver screen.
Yeah.
So
Because
when it comes to animation, DC has it on lock. Marvel
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
even sniff their jockstrap.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
because as
was.
far
Oh my bad.
because it's I'm sorry, go ahead. You go first,
I
Tyson.
was just gonna say the only thing Marvel did animation wise with those two Avengers animated movies. Those were actually pretty good, especially the first one.
I would disagree.
You didn't
I
like
would
them?
disagree. What I would say, well, okay, two things. First, the DC thing. DC has always beat Marvel when it came to animation.
Yeah,
The
no, I'm
only
not
the
arguing that.
Always.
the only thing DC has ever gotten away with live action has been Superman and Batman and barely Wonder Woman. Aquaman, if you ask me, was a fluke,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah,
But now, as far as it goes for comics, DC had one moment in time where they were the 800-pound gorilla, and that was in the 80s, and that was the British
Crisis on
invasion.
Infinite Earths.
Right, and then there was the British invasion with Vertigo. So,
Mm,
and that
yes.
mm.
so that was it for them. Now, as far as it goes for Marvel and animation, Marvel.
Oh,
Here's
excuse me.
why I disagree with your choice.
Yeah,
Because if Marvel
X
had
Men,
that moment in time where they were the 800-pound gorilla in animation,
X
it
Men
had to
Uncanny.
be X-Men and Spider-Man, the Amazing
Yes.
Spider-Man.
Yes, I
Yep.
agree. Yep,
Yes.
Yep.
you're
And
right. You're
and,
right.
and,
You're
and,
right.
and, and, and at the end, I might throw in the Iron Man Force Works Hulk thing.
But now here's the thing. If we're talking Spider-Man, because now here's the thing, Eisen. I know for you, it's a classic. For me, I lived the original live action Spider Man TV show,
I remember that.
Nick,
Yes, I do
which
remember
was
Nicholas
that.
Hammond.
filmed in California but set in New York. Anyway,
Mhm.
Yep, Nicholas Hammond. Yep.
yes. And who was also in an episode of Star Trek, the original series.
Oh wow.
Yes, that is correct.
Um,
And one more
Truck,
thing. One,
Truck.
one more thing. One
Yes,
more thing. One more
yes.
thing. Let's not forget he also played Friedrich, one of the children in Sound of Music.
Oh,
I did not
did not know
know
that.
that. I
Yeah,
did
that's
not
him.
know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's yeah.
I'm
He
gonna
played
have to
Friedrich,
I'm gonna have to
one of the Von Trapp children. Yeah.
But
Oh.
before I lose my point, so we had the original live action Spider-Man show from the 70s, which I saw first run. And then you had Spider-Man and his amazing friends. Then you had Spider-Man by himself. Then you had the X-Men cartoon from circa 90. The first one was 91, 92. Then you had the second one in 94. So Marvel has had animation. They were always the 800-pound gorilla in the room. But at some point in the 2000s, DC made an effort with the voice acting and the writing and the casting. And I want to say it was the first Superman animated movie that they came out with. Then they came out with others. They had a Doomsday film, and then they started making some Batman films. And since then, forget about it.
When did that
Marvel,
Oh, my bad.
no, go right ahead.
I was just gonna ask, when did that Batman animated series come out?
The original
92,
one?
Yes.
92.
Yes,
So
January 92.
I would say I think it probably when they took over, when they started, the tide started turning there.
Hmm. I would
But
agree.
they
I
still
would
had competition because
agree.
Uncanny X-Men, I think Amazing Spider-Man was still running.
93. Yeah, 93,
Yeah, they were
94.
still
Yeah.
running. Um, Later after that, soon after that's when that Superman one came. And I would say what I remember after that, when they really took it, is with Justice League, and then Justice League Unlimited is whenever they just ran with it.
Yeah. And let's not forget, simultaneously while those were running, they also had Teen Titans.
Yes, that's right.
And you know,
The
the
Teen
original
funny
Teen
Teen
Titan
Titans.
Teen
Yes,
Titans was huge.
so
Huge.
sure was.
the funny thing is this, right, about Marvel and DC. So Marvel changed the comic world with the Secret Wars. With
Mm.
and when that came out, I mean, every month it came out, and we were like, "What is this?" They literally took every Marvel character, they put them on Battle World, and they're fighting each other. And there's Beyonder and Galactus, and even Galactus couldn't fight the Beyonder, but then Doctor Doom. So we had that, and then
Hmm.
you had the Beyonder in his own little series. Then you had Secret Invasion later with the Scrolls. So DC
In the
scrambling.
2000.
DC scrambling. So DC comes out with Crisis on Infinite Earths, the multiverse. So Marvel, so DC started to turn the tide in the comics with Crisis on Infinite Earths. If we're being honest, and I'm a lifelong Marvel fan, but I have to be fair about that.
No, no,
So
it's true. No, it's true. I'm hardcore DC. It's true. It's true.
so the thing is this: the films, even though I'm generally down on the films, I think that Winter Soldier is the best, and Iron Man first one is the second best. The films are better than anything than DC has done, but the multiverse, Marvel got that idea from DC. DC created the multiverse, but even that, Marvel is doing better than DC. So the only thing DC does better than Marvel is the animation.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, with the exception of that brief window in the '80s with Vertigo and Crisis and all that,
Mhm.
because Jim Shooter did Secret Wars in '83. And DC did Crisis in '85. And matter of fact, it wasn't even supposed to be that way because Marv Wolfman was writing the Teen Titans, which was like their best-selling book at the time in the '80s. And he had created a villain called the Monitor. And after DC saw what Jim Shooter did with Secret Wars, they wanted something. So they took that character and had Marv Wolfman flesh out Crisis on Infinite Earths from that.
Right.
Um, and that was a one-on-one conversation I had with the man. That's exactly what he told me.
Nice.
So 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 yeah. So then after that, the bulk of everything else really was Vertigo. Alan Moore on Swamp Thing, Neil Gaiman on Sandman. The list goes on. Jamie Delano over on John Constantine Hellblazer, so on and
Hmm.
so forth.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah. Like I said, I'm a DC man, born and bred. But I gotta agree with you. You're right. Marvel
And
was definitely that 800-pound gorilla, no question to it.
and you'll have to excuse me for that one earlier, Lawrence, because when I was thinking of those two, Marvel animated movies, I was thinking about after that golden period we had there with the animated series, from both DC as well as Marvel, and I was thinking about strictly, pretty much after that, how they just have clearly, wiped the floor with Marvel after that.
What do
With
you?
that,
Marvel,
What do
Marvel
you? What do
dropped
you? Wait,
Marvel
wait, wait.
dropped the ball.
What are you apologizing for?
well, I was just trying to clarify. That's all.
No,
Oh
You
no,
good?
you're good.
no. Trust me, trust and believe, Eisen. I know you knew that. No,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
had, I
yeah.
no, I knew you knew that. I had no concern about it.
You know, at the risk of being called homophobic and sexist and misogynistic and toxic masculinity and all that other crap, you know, as a man, when I see this stuff, and you try to ram it down my throat.
Mm.
So, um, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the show came out, and I'm looking at it, and I'm surprised no one can see this woke crap for what it is, because the Mary Sue in Obi-Wan Kenobi is a 10-year-old girl. Because when you tell me that you have a 10-year-old girl who, first of all, the the actor, the little girl, is 9 now, which means when they filmed it a year ago, she was 8. So when you tell me 3 grown adults are chasing an 8-year-old little girl in a forest and they literally can't catch her, I'm like, come on, you're just insulting my intelligence now.
you, you know what?
Well, again, it's that thing where a lot of writers nowadays are like either Gen Z or they're at the borderline between millennials and Gen Z,
Which is
and they
where
have
my daughter is. She's at that.
yeah,
She's a
and they
little too old for Gen Z, a little too young for the millennials. She's in between. She's
yeah.
she's in her mid 20s now.
So there's this for a lot of them there's this theory in their head that history didn't start until they were born. But anyway,
Yes,
because I because because
yes.
I because I got two in their 20s as well.
Yeah.
Um, but,
It's the same thing. It's like
yeah.
Dad, that's so old school, Dad. Wait, well, no, it's 10 years ago. That's not old school, But see, and the thing is this, right? It's not just because you and I are the age group that we're in. We come from an age group. We come from a time. Our frame of reference is decades and centuries. This younger generation, their frame of reference is their frame of experience. So their frame of reference stops at the day that they were born. They don't know anything or care to know anything beyond when they were born. And I don't mean to make that as a shot. And I don't want either of you two on that we're speaking with now to take that as a shot. But people your age, just an observation, you know, it, again, my frame of reference is decades and centuries.
Well, yeah, but in all fairness, that's a choice they make because if you if again, since we're on the panel using Sigma and Eisen, here's the thing: I don't look at them being in that category because
Likewise.
these two gentlemen go and they if they like something, they're all in. See, so you got to understand, Eisen loves Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars was before he was born. So,
Mhm.
and he's followed through on everything from all the originals, the prequels, the animation, the books. I mean, so in that respect, it's a choice.
Mhm.
But the thing about it is you know going back to what you said about sounding homophobic or whatever. No, that's not what it is. And we need to like stop heading in that direction
Yeah.
because the truth of the matter is they like to put those labels on us because
Which is why I said
because
it that
because
way.
yeah, because we disagree with what they're doing. And the truth of the matter is, well, you're afraid of society changing. No, we're not. I said the very fact of what we love and what we into shows that to some degree we're very progressive people. You could not be into Star Trek unless you were.
Right.
Yep,
Correct.
that's true.
I
Right.
mean, the very concept alone, you have to be progressive. I mean, and you can't say that we're afraid of stories that talk about what's going on in society, because Star Trek, Star Wars, Blake Seven, Space 1999, Close Encounters of the Third Kind,
Blake's
all
seven is literally perfection. Blake
exactly.
seven is literally
So
perfection.
yeah, so all those things were representative, and use social stories to use social concepts and what was going on in the world to push forward. Just like that episode of Star Trek, the original series with Frank Gorshin, and the look Leonard Nimoy gave him when Frank Gorshin tried to explain what the problem is with the other dude he was fighting.
Right.
Well,
Mhm.
can't you see
Let
Lokai is
this
black
be a
on the left
final
side?
battleground.
Yeah, yeah, well, I don't understand. You're the same people. No, we're not. And then they're looking at him like, what are you talking about? Can't you see the difference? And Spock's looking at him and he goes, no guy is black on the left side. I was like,
Mm.
damn. And then Spock made that eyebrow thing. so
Yeah.
so you can't tell us we weren't writing socially conscious stories. I mean, the very foundation of sci-fi is about that,
Yeah.
because the whole point of sci-fi is that it's used to talk about current things today in a futuristic setting.
Yeah.
So
Sci-fi has always pushed forward the progressive concept. So you can't come in here and tell us that we hate it and we're angry at that. That's nonsense.
look at Star Trek the original series, the '60s. One of my favorite episodes, the Enterprise incident. Captain Kirk meets a Romulan commander who is a
Yeah.
woman, and she's in charge of 3 warships. A
Hmm.
woman,
Mm.
okay,
Hmm.
in the 1960s. Now, Blake 7, which is literal perfection, Supreme Commander Servalan, who is a woman. She is the supreme military commander of the Earth Federation. She commands millions of troops, thousands of ships.
Mm.
She is brilliant. She is ruthless. She is a tactician. Again, never power for power's sake. So again, when
I
you
mean, for
say that oh, now we need strong roles, no, it's because you are in your 20s or in your 30s and you're choosing. It's not because of your age, but as you said, you're choosing to only look at what you see now and not do the research and see that for decades there have been women and minorities who were in strong dynamic roles. So
I mean,
do
for I mean, I mean, I mean, for crying out loud! Even with all her nonsense, Jane Fonda gave us Barbarella.
Yeah, but
All
dude,
right.
I couldn't get past those cans.
Yeah.
So I couldn't see past the cans. I saw the cans and I was happy man.
Oh man.
All right. I think we definitely have hit the we're about to hit the 2 hour and 15 mark. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. We usually do the whole would you survive in this villain's world, but I'm actually gonna change it up a little bit. So because I'm with you all. I'm more in line with the original, not old, the original version of Megatron's philosophy and all. So I am going. We're going to do like a little round table, one by one, where you get your final thoughts and all. So starting with Lawrence, up to my right here. What are your final thoughts based off of the original Megatron's philosophy?
Well, first of all, that comment about old, appreciate the slight. Anyway,
Hey, I did correct myself. I did.
but
I caught myself for that.
like I said, if we're going on the original concept of him, um, could I survive in his world? I don't know. Would I side with him? Yeah, I could see myself doing that. Based on the original concept, I could see it.
All right, all right. Isaac Samba, your thoughts?
Yes, on the based on the analysis of the original version of Megatron, I would agree that yeah, it was about survival
Hmm.
of his species. and doing what was necessary for that, which is completely understandable and practical. You may, you may end up in a pool of your own blood and oil from it, but hey, I get it. It's not, something just some sociopath just out here, but he's doing it for the survival for needed resources for his species.
Yeah, there you go. And good sir, Logic Finest, your final thoughts.
I would say this. I would relate this to the current planet Earth that we live in the real world. Every country needs resources to survive. The most powerful countries on this planet, except for Germany, has powerful militaries. And throughout history, if you want to be a powerful state, you have to have a powerful military. And therefore, you have to control your natural resources. The island nation of Japan literally fought a war because they did not have natural resources. They lost, but that's why they went to war. So, yes, I'm lockstep with everything the original Megatron says and does and did. Because peace through strength. You need resources to survive. You have the power to take it. You take them because it's your survival or theirs. And I choose me.
Yeah, well, Magneto's still my daddy.
You know what? That's perfect to end the discussion there. So I definitely want to thank you gents for this discussion. And believe me, like I said, my brain tonight was a sponge. So even though we pretty much went through all different avenues and such, I still felt like this is a great topic. And I just thought about you definitely gave me an idea of maybe doing like a State of the Union in regards of pop culture, modern times, and in the past.
Entertainment.
Yeah, modern entertainment. I think that definitely be a series where we could definitely like do roundtable discussions. Because I mean, talking from our generation and then Lawrence and Logic's generation, even SKC, he's somewhere in the middle. We can throw him in there as well. I think that would be a great discussion. So I'm definitely going to put that on the back burner. But for the audience that were listening in, thank you so much. And thanks for listening on the replay. Also, thanks for the Cash App donations. Definitely appreciated. So, yeah. To be based on the poll I just finished up, looks like most people still agree with the original Megatron's philosophy. We have 83% vote yes, and only 17%, voted no. So, more increase based off of.
They need to be dropped into the nearest black hole because they're wrong.
Okay, you know what? With that note, let me play the intro so we could go out. So, good night, everybody.
The villains. For every good guy, there must be the bad guy. Society looks upon villains with disdain because they refuse to follow the rules. But are these villains really bad or misunderstood? Are they truly out for chaos and blood? Or are they more willing to get out of their comfort zones than the average Joe? Join us for our Villain of the Month discussion. We will break down their philosophy, their past, and their psychology. And then you decide for yourself if these villains are humans or if they are monsters.